Okay, so I mean, uh, judgment. We can get that one out of the way.
Yeah.
Quickly because the hierarchy is going to take a lot longer. Now, I did write quite extensively about judgment in the book, and I posted lots of excerpts of what it says in the Bible about judgment and why we shouldn't do it. But you see, there is a very uh, large bone of contention in that judge not
Lest you be
lest
judged.
you be judged. Yeah, and love thy neighbor like you love yourself. Well, I mean, it's kind of like, where do we go with that? Rationally thinking. And there's been lots of scholars that have tried and tried and tried to rationalize the love thy neighbor. And it appears that on the human egoic level, we simply can't do that. But you see, the thing is with the Bible, it speaks on many levels, and when you can decipher it, then you know that when Jesus is speaking about certain things, he's speaking from the spiritual realm. He's speaking from a vastly higher realm. And when you said to me last time we spoke, do I believe that Jesus, existed? I believe that there was such a man that had all different sorts of training, and but not the Son of God as portrayed in the Bible. Just a very wise person that trained with the Gnostics over a long, long time and tapped into spirit. So when Jesus says, "Judge not," uh, off the cuff, it sounds preposterous and completely untenable. But when we look into it deeper, we discover that there is an actual fact, a realm whereby we discover that if we do not judge, then we have a greater, higher propensity of entering into the kingdom of God. Because if we relieve our egoic mind of judgment, we no longer carry the weight of all the things we have a contention with. And now this is the thing about entering into the kingdom of God. As long as we've got judgment, as long as we've always got something to say about somebody or something, there always is going to be conflict within our minds and hearts. If we let judgment simply just dissipate and we set our sail on a horizon with no judgment, it doesn't mean that we can't assess things. We don't become blubbering fools, but we stop our accusory, our accusations, because it's the accusory level of judgment which is the detriment to us.
Can
I
I
mean,
can I
if we
can I
judge,
ask? Can I interject there 1 second? Um, so Jesus, you said, could have been a man that did once walk the earth, right? Um, have you heard of any other gods which stories are very closely equated to the one of Jesus Christ? Like, for example, like we got Krishna, Mithra, Buddha, we got
Gilgamesh,
Ra. Yeah, and here's the thing though, all of them, like even the sun in and of itself, has the same story as Jesus Christ, right?
yeah.
So, which one is the real one if we were to say there was one, right? Or is that just an allegory or a story? Or let's say maybe even a program of what your reality is. You get what I'm saying? Because even beforehand, how would man have pointed to a Christ figure to basically measure and say this is what we have the ability to do? Because Christ is all about, I have these gifts which you can do but maybe even better. You get what I'm saying? So what would man before 2,000 years ago have looked up to as far as like a Christ or a God figure? And which one would you say is really the one? Because they're just, the stories are so closely
Well,
equated.
I mean, yeah, but there doesn't have to be a one, which is a definitive one, you see, because when you look back at Thoth, Hermes Trismegistus, and all of these other mystics that have been written about through our mythology, you can see that they were all coming from the same premise. And the premise they were coming from was the ideal human being. It was to people that are very, very wise, very endowed in human psychology and contact with spirit, that knew how to live the perfect life, which was going to bring you as an individual the best possible human existence. And so there's no such one that is the one, is the king.
What would
No.
be the perfect human experience though? Would it be treat your neighbor as you would yourself? Is that the perfect human
Yes, I
experience?
mean, the perfect human experience is to live in peace
So
at the end of the day.
that would be a Christ consciousness then. It
A
would
Christ consciousness.
right. So then that would be so then we wouldn't need see the reason why people sometimes do what the Bible says is because they're afraid to go to hell. Just like no different than people don't commit crimes even though they really want to kill some people because they're afraid they'll go to jail. But you see, this is the thing. I feel like people once they have this Christ consciousness, this is a realization that you don't do it because you truly are hurting yourself the moment you treat others as you want. Let's say on a light level, I said that my car is always clean, right? But one of my pet peeves is going into a car that's all dirty or going into a house that looks all crazy and chaotic, right? So I would clean my car because that's what I would expect when I go into somebody else's car. So I'm only
Yeah,
being the frequency I want to receive. I'm being
yeah,
what I would want to receive in return. So I treat others how I would want to be treated. However, there are cases, I'm not a pacifist. A lot of people would say, well, isn't that pacifism? I'm far from that because if I got to put order, I will put the order, and I'm far from the type of person that would be a pacifist. I'm the challenging one that will basically, I'll take care of my toxins. If I got toxins, I'm gonna take care of it accordingly. But that's still coming from a space of love. You get what I'm saying? And that's why even sometimes you would hear the word love. It's not what you're hearing in movies. It's just basically where is your root and foundation from when you are doing the things that you're doing. You get what I'm saying? Are they coming from hatred? Like let's say for example, if I got a toxic partner, my partner is all toxic and shit. Some people would start becoming victims and detach and try to, put themselves over, higher than that individual. But in actuality, it just comes down to changing yourself. And at times, let's say God takes care of the process where that person would just come off your life, naturally rather than you having to push the person away just because they can no longer hold that frequency with you. Life happens to work in mysterious ways where, something happens where that person just falls off your life without you having to exert force. Even like when I got into the conversation with Zach where when I said neutralizing chemistry, it's not even where you really have to fight for a situation to even happen in your life. You have to have that in you first. Let's say, for example, a conflict where a mean person, that person doesn't even exist in my life because that's not even in me to begin with. And if it does appear in my life, it's there for a reason. You know what I'm saying? How do you decide
yeah.
to engage? Do you decide to match that frequency or neutralize that chemistry? If I want to match that frequency, well then, hey, I'm participating in the game like you just said, you're participating in the game to the fullest of its potential, but are you still coming from a space of love or do you have hatred and malice in your heart toward that individual genuinely? You know, it's all you. At the end of the day, it's just reflecting on you, and then you can see that's where you start exercising Christ consciousness. You're being Christ like, but
What?
it's genuine when you know you're doing it because you recognize and realize these things, not because you're told. Because if not, it's just religion telling you the shit that you're going to hell if you do bad things. You get what I'm trying to say? But a lot of this
Yeah.
comes from self work and self realization, which is why I said sometimes, doing these meditations and it's not to say that this is the only way to acquire it because that's no different than somebody saying the only way you can acquire higher consciousness is doing drugs. It's just basically just doing the inner work in yourself, like just looking at the flaws in you. You start to recognize the flaws outside are there because of you. You know what I'm saying? And it's because you're manifesting them in your reality that they're there. They're not going to disappear. But if you're experiencing them directly or they trigger you, it's because that's in you in the forefront, and you got to address it to some way, shape, or form. You know?
If we look at it like the cosmos is all you,
Hmm.
because it is.
Hmm.
People, unless they're philosophically endowed, they would instantly have a knee-jerk reaction and an objection to that. And they go, "Whoa, you're me, are you? Well, I'm over here and you're over there," and all that sort of thing. We've got to go deeper. We've got to go, into deeper realms of consciousness. And by the time we delve so deep into the realm of the human psyche, then we realize that the human psyche is the human psyche, and we all partake in human psyche. And so it isn't the individual, Ziggy or Aaron or anybody else, it's human psyche. So Jesus and all these different peoples, they're representations of the human psyche. And what they came to teach us is that, look, this is what you are. They're holding up a mirror and saying, look, this is you, and you have traits. And if you do this, then there's ramifications for that. If you do that, then there's ramifications to that. Now, some are negative and some are positive. But if we have self-reflection and we look inside our minds and our hearts and we ask ourselves, what is it that you want from life? And whatever you want from life, then that's what you set out to achieve. Now, if people are wise enough, they'll realize that the greatest asset to have in this life primarily is our health, and secondly is peace. Now, the health is because the body has needs, and if the body isn't satisfied and catered for, then it's going to cause us to have attrition and suffer in our lives. So this is why I've maintained my health for many, many years, which has it's enabled me to enter into the kingdom of God even before I was meditating or taking psychedelics. Because when we are a highly performing creature, our antennae is so in touch with cosmic spirit that we are absolutely being electrified by it. We're at the highest level of vibration. And when you can run up a mountain, when you can run for an hour or more, and there's no adverse physical effects on your body, there's only positive effects. And the way your heart is pounding in its chest and the amount of oxygen that's flowing through your body, you are actually having a godlike experience, because you are being exactly what the universe created you to be. Anything less than that, the universe didn't create you to be that. It's as simple as that. And so if you do not live in a way which is going to force you into doing that, you're not going to be experiencing the greatest benefits of what it is to be a human being. So you see, I'm speaking of all these things that I know absolutely categorically, because I've been there a thousand times over all my life, being super, super fit and experiencing life at the absolute maximum, because I'm capitalizing on it with every single ounce of my potential when we are fit and healthy. Then all we need to do is to calm our minds, and instantly we enter into the kingdom of God. And so when we look at things like that, you see there's lots of different portals to enter into the kingdom of God. And when we look at what Jesus was espousing, he's just saying, look, guys, look, the 10 Commandments, for instance. I mean, good God, really? We need 10 commandments. Don't kill your neighbor. Don't try and shag your neighbor's fucking wife. Don't covert their ox. Really? You need to tell us that from God? That's all elementary. And the reason why we had all these elementary 10 things, because if we perpetrated any single one of these, the chances are somebody is going to want to try and kill us. If you steal your neighbour's ox, you're in fucking trouble. If you fuck around with another man's wife, you're in fucking trouble. Because in those days, they just come round your house and fucking cut your head off. And so the 10 Commandments were a very elementary way into try and steer us away from a short life, to be fair. And so when we raise that up then into the wisdom of Jesus, and we feel the wisdom, we become endowed with the wisdom. That's then when we really start to appreciate when we do not judge, because when we do not judge, we free ourselves, Iggy. The moment we judge, we constrain ourselves, we burden ourselves, we fill ourselves with righteousness and hate and, all the things pertaining to judgment. And so if we release ourselves from judgment, we emancipate ourselves and then we set ourselves free. And then there's a higher propensity that then we will enter into the kingdom of God. So there's lots of things that we have to do before we enter into the kingdom of God, because we have to purify our minds and our hearts and our bodies. Now, purifying the body is one big deal, because you have to make sure that you eat all the right stuff and you do all the exercise and everything like I've just spoken about. Then you have to still the mind, which involves the meditation and non-judgment, and don't get into altercations and don't busy your mind too much with business, because you want to grab all the trinkets of the devil, because that's all it is. The devil's got shiny things for you. Come on, here they are. You can come and get them. Well, how do I come and get them? You get confused in your mind. You start thinking about all these different things. You start tormenting yourself with all the things that you don't have, and you start striving to get them, putting yourself under unnecessary stress. When at the end of the day, as soon as you realize that you don't need any of that to be happy, oh my word, look at the effort you save yourself. And then when you become like a Buddha and you sit under a tree and you realize that you are in God's kingdom, it is very, very simple when we look at it, but we're not told, how to get there, because the hierarchical system has hijacked the world and the human being, and it's told us from the get-go that we need to do certain things, we need to have certain beliefs, and we need to comply with this, that, and the other. It's a great paradox, because at the end of the day, being a human being is a very difficult thing, and it's not meant to be easy. And if everybody was sitting under, the baobab trees, then, there'd be no trains, there'd be no cars, there'd be no roads, and, there'd be no airplanes, and you name it. So we couldn't have that variety of human experience. Now, there's this energy which pushes for progress within the human realm. And so what we find that we have to do is we have to get a balance. And so then when we become Librans, we become, the scales, then we can engage in the human experience, which we came here to do, but we don't allow it to poison ourselves and take us out of the semblance of the kingdom of God.
How do you purify the body?
By diet and exercise, mostly by exercise, because in my life, within reason, I ate whatever I wanted to, but because of my tenacity and my drive, I would always push myself to excellence, and so I never carried any weight. I was always muscular and, physically fit, and, a perfect human being, the perfect height, the perfect build, and all that sort of things. And so designed to live a life in the best possible way. And so once you experience a very high level of fitness, then your body is very, very efficient at dealing with antioxidants, or free radicals, sorry. Dealing with free radicals. It gets rid of the free radicals in a very efficient way. And you can, your body is much more forgiving if you want to eat chocolate or crisps or fatty things, because you are so highly performing all the time. And when your body is in a high performance state, all food is fuel. And so, like Jesus said in the Bible, nothing that you put in here is going to defile your body. Only what comes out of here is going to defile you.
Yeah.
So there we can see that we can eat whatever we want to, as long as we purify the body in the natural way. because the body is absolute miracle. I've got a nephew. He's 18 years old now. He's 6'6", and he's as thin as a beanpole, and he's as white as a ghost. And all he's eaten, all of his life, is white foods: white rice, white bread, chips. The potato chips with not crisps, what we call crisps. Only things with exceedingly low nutrition, and yet, you know, there's little difference to to the way his body operates as the next person.
Hmm.
He's a perfectly functioning human being, and yet what his diet has been all of his life completely flies in the face of what we're told is a healthy diet. So how do you work that out?
Yeah. Well, I think that breathing properly is super important. I mean, 70% of toxins are eliminated through breathing, which you
Yeah,
said exercising
yeah,
forces you to take deeper breaths. But even if you got toxins in your body, let's say when you're intoxicated, a police officer pulls you over, they want you to breathe on a breathalyzer to measure the amount of toxins in your body, right? Breathing properly even eliminates, like, it shrinks your fat cells. Why? Because toxins are stored in the fat cells. So breathing properly is super important, and a lot of people don't breathe properly. That's the main thing. But it's so funny how I was pondering on this too. When you're eating certain foods, like, you notice certain things that are complex, they have a complex chemistry in the body. So when you eat sugar, it has the same effect as on your brain as when you take a shot of cocaine. So let's say, for example, you eat something that's marketed, and it's got certain colors like McDonald's or Burger King or whatnot. For some reason, I feel like these things affect your consciousness in a state where you see how you just said to purify your mind or to get it to be still. Uh, you eat cleaner foods, right? Simple chemistry. But the thing is that I feel like you're basically taking on the mindsets of everybody who's looked at that sign. And I'm not saying this is absolute. It's just something that I was pondering because I've done a lot of marketing in my life. And upon you looking at something, it's already in you. It's in your psyche. So the moment you look at something, it's in you. That's why sometimes things that just flash in your face, you see how they do certain things that flash, and it gets into your psyche, it gets into your subconscious, right? If it flashes quick enough, your conscious mind don't pick it up. It goes directly into the subconscious. Like if you're falling asleep and you listening to something, it goes directly into your subconscious. Your conscious mind is offline. So it's like that's like the gatekeeper, your conscious mind. So let's say, for example, some people are driving. The billboards are always like above you, McDonald's and whatnot. Um, Even though you personally say, "Oh, I don't eat that garbage. That's poison and whatnot," right? The fact that other people look at it, you know what I'm saying? It's still affecting uh, the psyche of the individual because the moment, let's say, you eat one of those burgers, the fact that it's got such a scrambled effect on your brain and you intake that chemistry, for some reason I feel like energetically just the psyche of whatever was on. That's why some foods you eat, you notice how they make your mind chatter a lot more than just like if you're eating simple chemistry, simple foods. Or notice how when you fast, you tend to be more at ease. Like your brain is not as chattery as like you, because your stomach's a brain and it's connected to the brain up here too. That's why your mom has told you like eat slower, so it gives the chance for the brain to know that your stomach is full because there's a connection
mhm,
between here and here. And even lustful things just down underneath. That's another brain. It's connected to the brain up above, and it determines how you look at your reality, how you interact with women and whatnot. So I feel like all that has a big effect on your psyche. And if you're not aware of what you're consuming, as far as like what you're putting in your mouth, is no different than somebody just consuming information. You may be paying attention to what you're consuming. You may not be paying attention to what you're listening to, and it's just getting programmed in you. And then later you wonder, where did that come from? And then that's why when I talked with Zach, I said, why do you believe the things you believe? Why are you doing the things you do? What are your goals and what are you trying to accomplish out of the things that you are actually doing? Do a lot of people actually sit down with themselves and really just dissect or do that spiritual surgery on themselves to get to that deep root core as to why they think the way they do, why they do the things you do? Why do you think you even need to do certain things? Like sometimes people wake up in the morning and they feel like they have to do something. Like where does that even come from? And is it from the things that we've been consuming? Because there's color schemes on the billboards, certain things that just flash in your face and you're not aware of it. There's color schemes to it. There's certain frequencies or sound. There's certain patterns. These people pay billions of dollars for that reason for marketing, and it's because it gets in you. And when it's in you, it's in you. And can you detect it as an observer? Like, say you're doing surgery on yourself, you're the only one that could do it. When you detect it, what do you do about it? You know what I'm saying? How do you go about it, and how do you address it? You get what I'm saying? That's why I asked you, how do you purify the body? We have the sun. The sun is basically the light of the world. But the sun is you. The sun wouldn't even exist if you don't collapse it into existence, no different than everything else. It's just the generator to basically collapse everything that you're looking at in existence. If the sun wasn't there, everything would be pitch black anyway, regardless if your eyes were open. But you have an inner sun in you, the black sun. That is something that I always talk about when we talk about, oh, if you're in darkness, can you actually see in the light? In the dark, I mean. Can you become the light rather than looking for light? It's kind of like the analogy I use to basically make sense out of, like, oh, if you're in darkness about information or about yourself, do you go looking for it outside of yourself, or do you search for that within you, and how do you address it? Does that make sense
Hmm.
about purifying your
Hmm.
space, purifying your mind, and just certain things outside of you? Do you disconnect from that, fasting from it? Because it takes 21 days to get your body back in order from the original state, let's say, or even 50 days, depending on the individual, how deep their programmings are.
Yeah.
Convincing yourself through affirmations, all these things. Just somehow that's where I feel the work for self mastery and self development really comes in, is just basically when you just sit in the dark, how do you feel? Do you feel like, how you can sit with somebody? How do I feel with that? I don't know. There's something about that person I don't like. You don't want to sit with them, but just sit with yourself. And what kind of relationship do you have with yourself when you're with yourself? No earphones, no music, nothing. Just talk to yourself. How comfortable are you with yourself? You get what I'm saying? Those type of
Yeah.
things you start developing. And I noticed that when I stopped meditating for a bit, and I went back to meditating, it's not to say that I was searching, because a lot of people just want to chase an experience. It's just even the fact that I didn't do it for a while, and I was putting so much attention to things outside of myself, that I just, for some reason, was just, my ego was like, oh, this is boring. I don't want to do this. Like, what am I getting out of it? You get what I'm saying? And then you start to
Hmm.
separate yourself from that, and I'm like, holy shit, like, my body's doing this. I'm not even the one that, because I know what I want to do, but my body is not comfortable doing it. Now I gotta
Yeah.
fucking make order out of that shit that's out of control now. Because if not, then I'm a slave to my body. That's how people
Yeah.
are. People are slave to their reality or slave to their body. Who's really in charge? Who's really making the decision? Things are pre-planned sometimes, and some people think that they're the ones making those choices, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just your mental state that happens to be where that manifests certain things into your reality, and you're like, did I make that happen, or you know, was I in control of it? You know, I don't know if that
But
all that made sense, but.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm,
I get where you're coming from.
mhm,
And so, if you see, if somebody asked me to write a self-help book,
mhm,
then I'll go, I can't write a self-help book. Um, I can tell you my life story.
mhm,
And if you find that helpful, then that's the best I can do. But if people come to me and say, Aaron, can you tell me how not to be stressed? Can you tell me how to find God? Can you tell me how to have a peaceful mind? Can you tell me how to be happy? Or can you help me with all these things? Um, I will go, well, how long have you got? Well, what do you mean? If you come to see me for like 1 hour, 3 times a week, for the next 6 months, I'll be able to give you some idea where you're going wrong. And then, well, can't you just tell me? That's preposterous. So if I said to people, and all my videos, people have seen how I live my life. Now, because I was financially independent, I had no stress where my next meal was coming from or where the rent was coming from. That is a massive plus if you want to be happy, if you
uh,
want to be healthy. So that's one thing. And I'll say to people, well, are you independently wealthy? And they'll go, no, I've got to do my job. Well, you're pretty fucked then, because that's one of
I
the
think that's number
prerequisites.
one. Yeah, that's one of
That's
the main
number
ones.
one. Yeah, then do you live in the country? Do you live in a beautiful environment like I was living, like I've lived in many times in my life? I was living where every single day I used to walk on this beach for miles, sometimes 3 times a day, for hours and hours, walking in the water's edge, up to my thighs, and sometimes going in the sea and feeling the sand, all the different textures beneath my feet, and observing the life and this, that, and the other, the sun on my body and my naked body, save for shorts, and having all those health benefits. Can you do that? Well, no, because well, you're fucked then, aren't you? When you go back to your house, can you just sit in the dark for like 2 or 3 hours, meditating, or just casually, gently letting your mind just drift around, thinking about your life? Well, no, because I've got kids and, I've got to do a dinner, and my old man's, he wants me to do this. Well, you're fucked then, aren't you? So if people, say to me, how can I live this perfect life? Well, you change your life completely at the end of the day. And you see, it's took me a long, long time to work out what we need to do to put ourselves in the realm of the kingdom of God. And so work is the first thing that has to go, because that fills your mind up full of shit. Now, if you do have to work, you have to go into this environment, which is full of McDonald's signs and traffic lights and, sirens, woo, 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 any number of things, all different sorts of people that are judging you and you're judging, and la di da di da. And, can you imagine the amount of subliminal information that your mind takes on in any given day? And just a simple thing like when you look at a McDonald's sign, when you look at a McDonald's sign, that sign is indicative of a unhealthy heart and a fat, out of shape body, because there's very little nutrients in there. There's a whole lot of poisons, and if you eat that shit on a regular basis, then you're going to suffer. And so when we eat one of these things because we crave the fat and the salt, subliminally we know that every bite of what we're taking, we're poisoning ourselves. Your body acts reciprocally to that, like Bruce Lipton. Every cell in the body, it is creating its own environment, and it's all about environment. So if you put shit into your body, all the cells in your body are swimming through shit, just like your mind is swimming through shit when you enter into the city. So what do you have to do? You have to stop eating shit, and you have to stop entering into shit. So you go out into the natural environment and you start cooking healthy foods, natural foods, the best you possibly can. You have a peace of mind, and then all of a sudden your heart and your mind will open up, and then you'll start to get in touch with spirit and all these sort of things. The modern man is pretty well fucked. And
Wouldn't the main
they've
thing also, I think the main thing to tell these people you think would be like, what do they actually want? Because I feel like a lot of people don't know what they really want, and then that's the big step forward. I really had to come to terms with, what do I really want? And when I know what I want, then I work toward that, and then I just try to, stay focused on that path. You know what I'm saying? But like, if I ask you, Aaron, what do you want? And right now, at your age, at the stage of the game you're in, what do you truly want out of life from this moment that
well,
you're going
I
forward?
would say, okay, so let me speak from several vantages, because there's many of us here. Now, what does my ego want? Well, I would have to say, well, the ego at my time of life wants to be left alone. It wants peace, it wants tranquility, and it wants to be able to do whatever it wants to do, because it's become pretty pedantic. It's in its old age, and it don't like being fucked around with. And so the ego wants an easy, satisfying life. What does the spirit want? The spirit wants contact. He wants contact with cosmic spirits. He wants unity, because what we discover when we look at all of these religions is that the root of it, at the very, very deepest root, is unity that we're all seeking. we're all seeking unity from the get go as soon as we come out of the womb. When we come out of the womb, we enter into the big, wide, unforgiving world, and we're longing for something which is going to nurture us in the same way as the womb did for 9 months, or for however long our consciousness came about, when it was enjoying being at the perfect temperature, in the peace and tranquility, assuming that the one wasn't traumatized. And so as soon as we're born, we are fighting unconsciously to get back into where we came from. And so, that's why then we seek the womb, the spiritual womb. And when we enter into a deep meditation, it is like we're going back to the womb, because maybe we can hear our own heartbeat. I never can, because mine is so faint. Um, there's just a stillness, there's a contentedness, there's a darkness, there's an emptiness, there's not a single bit of stress, in that place. And as soon as we open our eyes, it's like, oh, this world thing again. I'm out of the womb again. And that's the beautiful thing about meditation. You see, the ego and the body will fight tooth and nail to avoid meditation initially, because it's the last thing it wants to do. Because first and foremost, the ego feels very compromised, it feels usurped, it doesn't want to be set aside, it's not used to being set aside, it wants always to be on the go and to be thinking and to be challenged and this, that, and the other. That's what the ego does. And so when you start to meditate, the ego starts to say, this is boring, this is shit, let's think about this, let's think about that. And that's what's the greatest challenge. But by the time you condition the ego over however long it takes, the ego is set aside. And then the ego starts to realize that in actual fact, this meditation is pretty beneficial to me, because it enables me to have a rest and I can chill the fuck out. And then I can concentrate on other things. And then when I've, been set aside and I've had a rest, then I can engage with more energy in other things. So the ego does actually come around. And what I've discovered in my life is that as soon as spirit came on board, the ego was exceedingly threatened. And for a very long time, the dark night of the soul, this is when we're heavily compromised until there's a hierarchy which has been established, and the ego has to accept 50% maximum of the ground, whereas the usurper spirit will claim the other 50%, and then you've got balance. If you don't have that balance, then you're in turmoil. And so that's what we need. The ego is the operating system which is absolutely necessary to have a human existence. And so we can't try and crush it and diminish it beyond, what it does. But we have to realize, the ego has to realize that it's not the be all and the end. When we evolve, there is something else going on. And if the ego doesn't pay attention to that, it will never have any respite, and it will get more and more agitated as life goes on, as the body gets older, as they start to suffer more. And the ego wants to do all these things, but it can't do them anymore. It still looks at women the same as it did when it was 20 years old, only it's no longer appropriate. And there's all different sorts of things that the ego is compromised by. But if you offset that with the beauty of the stillness and the contentedness of spirit, then that's when you grow gracefully.
Right. So, like, you see how you said that when you're in your mom's womb and then you come out, you're like, oh, here you are. We talked about energy and whatnot, and energy being the source and God being the vessel. But when you're in your mom's womb, right? Whose energy is that?
Well, I mean,
So, like, we're here, and let's say we're here in a womb, and we talked about it just earlier about recognizing your mother here, but whose energy is it really then? You know what I'm saying? If your energy uh, determines the expression of God, right? And I know we talked about ego and whatnot, but when you're in your mom's womb, are you? Because there's life. obviously the baby's alive in the mom's womb, but are you the energy or is your mom the energy? And what determines what comes out of the mom?
Well, of course, you're connected to your mother and you're highly dependent on her for your oxygen and for your sustenance. And so you are effectively a parasite.
Mhm.
For 9 months, you are parasitical on the mother, and you have no independence as long as you're in that womb. But then when you are severed, then you become an entity in your own right, just like when cells split. You see, it's just the same. When one cell splits into two, well, that's what the human does in relation to a woman and a child.
Mhm.
And so when you are within the womb, then you are equally your mother. And so you and your mother are one. So when we look into when Jesus says, I and the Father are one, well, I mean, he's speaking metaphorically with a connection of consciousness. They share the same consciousness. Only Jesus has momentarily been separated from the Father to have an existence in the human form. And that's what we've all done. We've all separated ourselves from the womb of consciousness. But we are all one fundamentally. And so once we realize that we are one, and we have only been separated in the physical form, and it's only a temporary thing, then we shouldn't be too stressed about it. It's you see, we see when small children get separated from their parents and they start to panic. Well, human beings are in a constant state of panic. Unless they settle their hearts, because they know that they don't die anymore. And so once you settle your heart into not having the fear of your demise, then you know one no longer worried about the separation.
Mhm. You don't feel like humans are parasite to their own individual body, the body being a reflection of everything outside of themselves. But let's say because of the stuff that sometimes we consume, right? Um, I'll give you an example. Like calcium is the most abundant element in the body. It's one of the most important elements in the body because it's responsible for the structure and foundation of your body, which is the skeletal system. So let's say, for example, we consume foods that are out of balance with the body. The body starts to have to rob calcium from the skeletal matrix to balance these acids that we're intaking, these inflammations and inflammatory foods and whatnot, even to the point where even sometimes when we get stressed out and make things that don't really matter to the point that we have to, basically rob certain things from the body. Well, the body does it. But um, this even compromises the parathyroid, and we actually depress the body because when your parathyroid is compromised, then the body feels depressed. This is why sometimes we have to go to doctors and take medic. A lot of people are depressed, and it's a lot of it is not just the food, but the information we consume, the media, the drama, the negativity. It's all inflammatory. So let's say, for example, if you have a child, okay, the child being parasitic tends to rob calcium from the mom. That's why the mom tends to have brittle nails, tends to lose her hair if she's not eating the right foods. This is just lack of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Um, do you feel that this is something that we can actually manage and work in our favor with a little bit more knowledge of how chemistry works and just basically not catering to the addictions of like what we consume as far as food or media or information? Because in actuality sometimes even let's say the bodies consist of cells. The cells have an expression, but the expression is determined by the person's perception. So if the baby's inside the mom's womb, we should give that baby in the womb as much harmony as possible because that baby is also experiencing what you're experiencing in your reality. Even if it's stressful, then the baby experiences that stress. But then in kind, while I ask, because a lot of people say we choose our lives or our lives are given here by chance, right? So that's also a topic that I got into with Zach, where some animals are born into a certain existence. What are where you came here as a lottery ticket, or do you choose the life, or was it something that you've always been doing that you keep repeat the same loop, or what is your opinion on that as far as reincarnation? That's something that I've been wanting to talk to you for the past couple of chats, and we never got to it. But the only reason I bring this up is because who's in charge? Is it the energy or the consciousness of that baby that chose the mom, that knows that mom is going to be a fucked up individual? And who's really in charge of all that? Because I talk about the end goal being your responsibility. The process is God's responsibility. You don't take over the process. There's too many variables there. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, first off the cuff, when we look at the parasitical nature of things,
Mhm,
well, everything is parasitical.
mhm,
We are parasitical on the air. We're parasitical on heat. We're parasitical on food. We're parasitical on emotion. We're parasitical for entertainment. We're parasitical for every single thing. And when we look at our bodies, then the body, in actual fact, is just a conglomerate of parasites.
mhm.
We could never say I with any, conscience with the human body. We should all say we because there's trillions of small, animals which, make up the body. All the bacteria that is digesting food and doing this, that, and the other, and the little mites we have in our eyes and our nose and our armpits and all this sort of thing. So the whole thing, you see, because it isn't separate, and you see the biggest delusion is ego, thinking that there is separate things. There is nothing separate here. And so if we just imagine that we are a part of a simulation, then you try to get hold of a part of the simulation. You can't, because there's nothing there except light. If it's a projection like a hologram, there's only light there. And so, therefore, we have to realize that the ego is a fiction. And if we're going to be listening to the ego, then we're going to be having a human experience. If we want to have a spiritual experience, the first thing we do is stop listening to the ego.
So, okay, let me phrase this question. You know how we talk about as within, so without, as above, so below, right? So we look at how the systems are designed here. If you do something bad, you obviously go to jail and you're robbed of your experience. You're nothing but a number. You're not even your individuality anymore. I've seen cartel members that literally even they even shave their head to let them know you're not even the individual you once was. You know what I'm saying? I remember El Chapo had a mustache. They took that shit right off of him. He had no control even about his appearance. So
Yeah.
you have to wear a uniform. You have to eat when you're told, go out when you're told. You're told when you can go out and even talk to other people. You're under the mercy of the system. That's if you do something bad. So let's say, for example, okay, because this is the thing. When I saw the documentaries that vegan show, like Dominion and whatnot, I look at it from a very neutral perspective, and I couldn't help but to see people. I saw people, and one would say, well, if you see people, why would you eat animals? And I'm like, yeah, I saw people, but I saw people, and I asked myself, why do I see people? That's the whole thing, you know. And what are the odds that I have a cat that lives like a millionaire in my garden, eating the best foods, sometimes can come in if it's raining or snowing, they can sleep inside and they know when they want to go out. They can come in and out as they choose. They're not confined to a space. My cats go out when they feel like it. If they want to go out, they can just leave, and they'll come back when they want. They're
Hmm.
trained. I have the liberty of not having litters. They go outside to use the bathroom. But what are the odds that the consciousness or the essence had to be born into a cow that was in a slaughterhouse versus the cat in my garden, right? Or what are the odds that I'm here as a human talking about it while that consciousness doesn't even know who his mom is after a few years? You know what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying? Are you here by chance? Is it a lottery ticket? Is it fate? Or do you choose the life? Or, because this is my little, pondering as I do meditating and I ponder on things. I do a lot of pondering in about life. How does it feel to even not be here anymore? Just die. Can you fathom being outside of space and time? These things I ponder really deeply on. So when I look at these animals, I say, well, how do we know that these animals didn't do something in a past life, and in order to pay this debt, they had to experience a very short life, but they had to experience a very brutal life in a slaughterhouse. The only thing is that these animals don't have a perception of time the way humans do. So to them, it might feel like an eternity, this slaughter and torture they're going through. You know we live to about 80, 90. You know what I'm saying? So whatever our sufferings are, we kind of gauge, okay, we gotta go through this shit for another, like, this amount of years. If I live that longer, if you got a disease, you probably measure your life, you know you're about to die. But these animals, to them, it may feel like an eternity. So that may feel like actual hell to them. You know what I'm saying? What is.
I tell you,
Mhm,
I tell you one thing that you
mhm,
won't do anymore
mhm,
when you take psychedelics.
mhm.
You won't have the propensity to keep reverting back to an individual perspective. You will be inverted, because what I'm going to say to you now is that when you're speaking about, well, this cow's consciousness and this cat's consciousness and our consciousness and this, that, and the other, what I'm going to be saying to you is, look, when you look at it, there is only one consciousness. And if there's
No,
only one consciousness,
I
Ziggy,
understand. Yeah,
then
good, good.
every single experience is being experienced by the same thing. So therefore, there's no good and there's bad. There's just a variance, and the variance is a beautiful thing.
You're
So there's no
absolutely right.
evil in the.
You're
Yeah,
absolutely right. But here's the thing, though. The reason I ask these questions is because I'm experiencing my reality here, and I'm
yeah,
experiencing the polarities of things. But I'm also questioning as an observer, right? Because we see a lot of debates. A lot of people get so passionate about animal cruelty to the point that there's movements that are very, very weighed upon defending these animals. And I say to myself,
yeah,
okay, but are these animals even real? Because you see, I agree with you. It is one consciousness. But in my reality, I'm observing wars, obviously things happening in my reality. You're aware of these things. You don't put your energy and so much focus to it that you become a badge and go become an activist to these things. But I'm observing these things. Sometimes I question, well, just I sometimes I look at the beauty and the miracle of how a seed. We talked about this at one point. A seed just becomes such a big tree, such a beautiful chemistry on how things come to life. There's life flowing to and through that, even though it's not animated the way an animal is. But yet we put more emphasis on respecting a cow and not a tree that's actually really still alive. But we don't understand what's behind the actual tree. There's so much intelligence to the point that even a simple sunflower will lean toward the sun. Everything is experiencing in its own individual way. Something as small as a bivalve. And these vegans will say, "Well, I can eat a bivalve because there's no sentience in a bivalve because there's no brain or nervous system." But yet a bivalve has a heart, and a heart is basically more electrical and more powerful than the actual brain that you have in your head. You get what I'm saying? That's why the Egyptians actually took the brain out and discarded it and kept everything else intact. But how do we know there's not a more advanced chemistry and and intelligence in a simple bivalve? You get what I'm saying? Sometimes even the most complex things may be further from God. Look at us humans. We're further and further away from God just because so much complexity and so much complex things that we have, that God is in the simplest of things. You get what I'm saying? And sometimes such a simple thing, in the smallest minute, you'll find God. But yet we look at a cow, and like I said, I don't have nothing against vegans, and I even told you that there's so much. We talked about it earlier about the consciousness of a cow. A cow is very conscious. We just don't understand it because we're not connected to these things. Now, as far as the connection goes, and I understand the whole psychedelic thing that you're talking about with the oneness. I told you I've had my experiences without the drugs, but I've had it in a different way. It's just like to come to Earth, for example. Let's say just to come to Earth. I don't believe there's a one way to come to Earth. The same way we're experiencing polarities, you can come to Earth by being love. Whatever is not backed up or under the frequency of love cannot even exist here. It cannot hold itself here because everything here has to be love. Regardless of how evil it looks, it has to be love at the core. Or you could be fallen, the fallen angels. You could be fallen or you could be love. You could come here and manifest out of love. But I feel like there's not even a one way, there's a couple of ways. But that's why I said, without going into the way we understand it as far as non-duality, I want to talk about it from the perspective of a human and just questioning reality, no different than one space we were once at. A cow is there. What are the odds that that cow is there having that experience, right? Because if I say that that's one with me, right, then I would say, okay, then I understand the consciousness of that cow. Then that's the reason why that cow is there, is because it did something bad in its past life. But what are the odds that it's experiencing that and I'm not directly experiencing that? You know, people say they're empathic, they can experience other people and whatnot. I can put myself in your shoes when you're talking to me. I get mental pictures based on language, but just at the core of things, just experiencing the polarities, not the duality, but the polarity. What are the odds? Do you think that that's a lottery ticket? Is that fate, or do you think that consciousness chose that reality, or was that in it has to pay a debt the same way we have to pay a debt here in this reality? And it's not to complex things. It's just to kind of like look at it and say, well, what is it? What could it possibly be? You know what I'm saying? I hope I kind of made sense with that, because I don't like complexing things. I like making it simple, but sometimes looking at it, why do these polarities exist?
Well, I mean, when we look at water, we can look at snow, we can look at sleet, we can look at ice, we can look at uh, mist. We can look at lots of different facets of the same thing.
Mhm.
And if you say, well, why is there a snowflake? Why is there a raindrop? Why is there an icicle? And why is there a wave and all these sort of things? And I'll say, well, that's water expressing itself. Okay. And you can say, well, why does water want to express itself? Well, that's an unanswerable question. You'll have to ask the water. But if you say, what's the chances of this cow? Did it do something wrong? I'll say, take away your consciousness and then see what's left. There's nothing left, is there? You take away your consciousness, there's nothing left. So, what is actually happening then? Your consciousness is happening. Your consciousness is projecting onto the cow some facet of your emotion, some facet of your belief system. Schopenhauer, one of the greatest philosophers, said that this life is all will and representation. So it's our will, what we want to will our lives to be, and it's designed by the representations that we have. So this is a representation of other experience that I have. Every single thing is just a representation. When I look at a leaf, it's a representation of all other leaves and green things that I've seen. And so if I want to ask any questions, why are you green, leaf? Why are you veiny, leaf? Why are you, this particular shape or anything like that? Then we have to come back to our own will and representation. And all that's happening in actual fact here is simply that it's consciousness. There is nothing else going on. We don't have to have any consideration for anything else. Consciousness is all what's going on, and consciousness doesn't have a problem with about being a cow, being slaughtered, or about being this, that, and the other, because it's just all facets of the same thing. It knows no pain, it knows no joy, it knows nothing. It's just having an experience, a conglomerated experience. And so when we step back and look through the eyes of God, through the mind of God, then everything just is how it is, and it's beautiful and it's complex. If we ask why there's a cow being slaughtered, well, what would the world be if a cow wasn't slaughtered? Would cows live forever? And then we'll be asking, why do cows live forever? Why is there 20 trillion cows on the earth cluttering everywhere up? That's fucking weird. We'd have a problem with everything, because we're going to be finding something to project onto the world, which is different to what we think we are. We are this moment in time. Consciousness is having a human experience, but maybe if we reincarnated, you're going to have a cow's experience, which will end up in a slaughterhouse one day. And is the cow going to know it's in a slaughterhouse? Is the cow going to feel stress? Is the cow going to feel pain? Is the cow going to be anxious? We think that they are some occasions. Why? Because we're stressful, we're anxious, and we project it onto them. But what I can say to you from watching thousands of nature programs, whenever I've seen an animal which is in the jaws of another animal which is about to consume it, it's just there. in a level of acceptance, invariably isn't even struggling. It's not squeaking, it's not squawking, it's not doing anything. It's just in the jaws of whatever animal. And if we see a deer or a frog or any of these animals in the mouth of a snake, and it's just sitting there and it's looking as the snake's jaw slowly, slowly, slowly envelops it. It's not begging for it to be released. It's not struggling, struggling, struggling. There's something inside that's turned that off.
Yeah, but you
It's a
see that
resignation.
that's a lot of what I've been talking about in my videos when it comes down to this topic. You know, how do you know that these things don't want to be eaten? See, I've even mentioned when humans may be consumed by gods, and you know, this is where I say that even like when we eat certain meals around holidays, um, you don't think that that animal is experiencing that joy and that memory in a human experience. If it's a good experience, it's living through you now, yet it went through a slaughterhouse, right? It went through the darkest moments in its life, but then yet it's now experiencing its reality through you. The human may be unaware and it may catch, you know, the emotions that it went through in the slaughterhouse, because it's a symbiotic thing that's still happening. It's some reciprocal thing. You're giving a better experience to that energy because you can't destroy it, you can only transfer and transmute it. But somehow an unaware human can actually start to still feel those things and not know why those things are being arisen from them. They arise in you, they develop within you somehow. But it's basically from what you consume. So for example, I always say you are what you eat, and what you eat becomes you. Because the same way when you eat the plant, take a psychedelic, take in the air, you're having a chemistry. Something's happening, right? But the reason I'm actually big on this, because I say if a vegan, and the reason I'm big on this is because I was in New York a couple of times and I'm in a restaurant and you get these vegans coming into a restaurant with signs and shit, and they're fucking like interrupting the business. I'm like, oh, what? This shit's fucking stupid. Like, what the fuck is this shit? You know what I'm saying? I
Mm,
just looked at it and I'm like, this is preposterous. I'm here enjoying a meal, having a good time with my date and whatnot, and all of a sudden, you know, ah, la, 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 and they bring fucking screens and shit. I thought that was very, very disrespectful, like a pest in the garden. Now,
yeah,
even these type of things, right? The same way they come in invading, there's always going to be a predator. Okay. And this is where my predatory instincts kicked in. You know what I'm saying? This is why I said there's always a prey. There's always going to be a predator to that prey when you come in thinking that you're interrupting and becoming a pest or a disturbance or a nuisance. If I got white flies on my apple tree, see, I could go and do divine intervention. That's why I talked about this in one of my videos. Why do bad things happen on the planet? It happens, but just as much as it happens, good things also happen. And it looks like it's a bad thing, but it's not a bad thing, right?
yeah,
But I can be God and I can do chemicals and just destroy shit. What I did is I left it alone. In a couple of days, I saw a swarm of ladybugs going to town on that shit. But the whole thing is that these ladybugs ate those white flies. And I even look at it from the perspective of those white flies. Those white flies were in bliss and harmony eating my fucking plants. And those ladybugs aren't eating those white flies in a fucking torturous, low vibrational state. They were eating it in its best state. So the ladybug ate that, and it's now having another experience in that state. You know what I'm saying? So now it became the ladybug. The ladybug becomes food for something, but it's all a chain of command. It's like the evolutionary state, but it's all in its best, most. I call it survival, because survival not just living. And you can still hear me, right? So it goes in and it's living its best life. It's going in there. But then when we eat these animals, they're going through that state. But it's because that's what we demand, because we decided to engage in a fake ass system where we have to go to work, do these things. So we no longer hunt our food. We go to supermarkets. We demand it by going and buy those foods at the supermarket. We for those things to happen. But then in kind, look at it from an energetic standpoint. And like people talk about, let's say spiritual people, they say, oh, I tapped into my past life. You know, it's like, how do you know what I look at past lives as I'm doing now what I've always been doing. And I can only change it once I become aware of what I'm doing. If not, it's the same repetitive loop. You get what I'm saying? Like, let's say if I live my life, I wake up, I become a farmer, and I die and I farm. I'm going to die.
and I'm gonna probably reincarnate and become a farmer again. If I never self-actualize, never self-realize, my consciousness looks for the light of just being a farmer. Because you wake up when you go to sleep, right? You have dreams, and most of the dreams
The
is
the
dependent on what
the the audio's gone very muffled now. Is someone leaving a message or something on your phone?
No, it's my Bluetooth turned off. I'm turning it back on again.
Ah, just let me go to talk
Yeah,
quickly
you
again.
could go in. You could go in now.
So, um, I don't know if you can still hear me, but I'll just cover this little one last point. But, uh, the survival over living. Um, so yeah, this is what I was saying. So it's basically doing what you've always been doing. But if I become aware, right? Let's say if I was born into a poor household, I can become aware that it's due to negative poverty thinking of my parents, say ancestors, aware and override and change those programs. Now I change those programs. I just changed my life only because I changed my mind. You know what I'm saying? So that's why now it comes down to animals, right? Let's say if I lived in animalistic state here, then how do I know I don't come back as an animal just to experience what, like if you do a crime here, you get locked up like an animal. You get treated like an animal in jail. You know what I'm saying? You get told when to eat, when to live, how to live. The same exact way if you have a pet or a house, an animal in the slaughterhouse, it's the same thing. That's why I equated those two things. But I always questioned a lot about reincarnation for that reason. But I also realized that, you know, there's no stupid questions. This is why kids have the ability to develop, because they're developing their mind. They're making up their mind. It's because they ask so many questions. You get what I'm saying? They're asking a lot of questions. They ask, why is the leaf green? Why are you veiny? They ask all these questions, and there's no dumb. There's a lot of depth even to that, to say, why are you green? Why are you veiny? Why is this? Where do babies come from? We stopped asking these questions. That's the problem, because a lot of humans think they know it all, or they think that it's just the same answer to just say, oh, we're just one. We're just source. Which is just one consciousness. But I don't think that. I think, there's a lot of truth to that, but there's also a level that we have to still be childlike and question these things, because it's it's part of the evolution of what we can do as, uh, for our consciousness. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes I may ask a person like you, who's in the same frequency as I am. You know what I'm saying? And that's why sometimes scientists, they brainstorm and they put their minds together and they come out with brilliant things. When two great minds think alike, they can build real strong things. That's the reason why I ask these questions. But I look at the way I'm telling you, humans get treated like animals in jail. When they commit a crime here, they live their life like an animal afterwards. I don't care how luxurious you lived your life. El Chapo, it doesn't matter. It was a bunch of narcs that lived their most empowered life. They even challenged the government. That's how much power they had, right? But they never matched the power of the government. The government was still able to trap them only because they took the position of the mouse, and they gave the power of the government to be the cat. But what if you truly took that power to be the cat? Could you create your own government? I mean, these people had their own military almost. They had their own escorts, but there's still so much power in the government because of the power we've given to that system. But do they really have that power? Do they really have that? Or did we just give it to them? Somebody has all this power, say a speaker on YouTube. It's because of all the power people give to them, with all the attention they give them, asking them questions that they can ask themselves and get the answers to. You get what I'm saying? I've seen YouTubers where people in the chat, how do I reach my best life? How do I? Who the fuck? Why the fuck are you asking them? Ask
Yeah,
yourself how to get that shit, and ask God, bitch. You'll get the answer. Like, stop
yeah,
giving your fucking power away. It pisses me off, because I'm like, you have so much potential, and it's like, why do I speak up on this? Because somebody will say, well, why does it trigger you and bother you, Zigzag? Well, I'm like, well, oh, I look at you like if you were my children, the same exact way. I only try to show you the potential that you have. I'm not trying to teach you shit. You already know it. But the moment I see you giving your power away, maybe I can just reflect and say, where am I giving my power away? Maybe it's why I ask these questions about the animals, the vegans. I debated a vegan, right? And it was a harmonious debate, to be honest with you. We didn't end in bad blood because it was not rooted out of hatred. I never hate. I still have the utmost respect for this individual. Yet I don't see eye to eye with him. He said at the end of the debate, "Oh, I think we agree on many." And in my mind, I'm like, "No, we don't. You know, we don't. You know, if you want to think we do, you think we do only because I said I'm not against your practice, because I'm not
Yeah.
putting a badge, because I didn't put a badge as a carnivore to go against you, but I'm still challenging you. Yet you still think I agree with you? When you couldn't answer most of my questions? No, I don't agree with you. But then again, if you can't answer my questions, then you're just going along with a religion, or you're going off emotions, or I look at this as an imbalance in your animalistic root chakra. That's how I look at it. And this is where I came to this realization the moment I sat down in that restaurant. I said, these people have an imbalanced root chakra. You know, there's something, like you said, it was absolutely, that's why I said you're absolutely right. There's something about them that when they look at this animal, it's triggering them emotionally. There's something about this. It's like when somebody has an inner child trauma, something that happened in their childhood, and then it happens in their adulthood. It triggers them because of their inner childhood. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. There's something in your animalistic nature, because we all have animalistic spirits in us, that's imbalanced. Something is off for you to have to be so.
Representation. So
Yes.
it's like, getting back to Schopenhauer again.
Yeah.
Whatever we do in this life, we're going to get triggered by things that have happened to us, because we're like, a blank motherboard, and from the day we're born, we're written upon.
Yeah.
And depending on what stories have been written upon our motherboard, is the stories that we're going to be telling ourselves and other people's as we go through life. And so, if you looked into the psychology of all these, animal, protectionist people, then you'll see that they have an issue with blood, pain, death, bullying, manipulation, and all these sort of things. Um, they want to fight against all of the things that they couldn't adequately fight against when they were kids. And so they feel as if they are soldiers for, victims that can't protect themselves. And so this is why they choose animals, because animals can't, tell their story. And so these people then, they get some sort of respite from the pain and suffering that they had as individuals, through the prevention of pain, in animals, whatever they feel that they can do. Or if they can save one animal from the slaughter, then, it's working for them. So again, it's just a representation, and it's driven by their will. And so when we look at the whole of the world, with all the different animals and creatures, and if we want to create terms such as good and bad and right and wrong, then that's the human prerogative. But we don't have any right to copy and paste that onto the universe. We don't have any right to copy and paste that onto creatures which have been in existence far longer than we have, that have been living with whatever they've been living with, snakes eating rodents and this, that, and the other, for millions of years before the human beings come along. And now we want to change the cosmos. Who the fuck do we think we are? It's ridiculous. It's absurd.
You know,
And
let me throw this in here. Let me give you an example, because I just thought of something. When you look at a cell, you got the nucleus of a cell. Okay, the nucleus is known as the brain, right? But how can you take the nucleus out and the cell still survives, right? And that's because it's a brain, but it's not the brain that we think of as a brain. It's actually the gonads of the cell. That's what the nucleus is. So I look at the cats. I have 17 cats. Let's say if I didn't neuter and spay these cats, they would have been multiplied. But I never put these cats here. I moved here and I happened to have such a love for these creatures that I did something for them. I paid over $1,500 to spay and neuter them, right? But I also noticed the temperament of the cats. They were a lot more aggressive. They were a lot more territorial, and a lot more of, they were just more savage, real savage. If you see a cat that's not neutered and he's in heat, Man, you could see the savage. Their hair looks different. Their face, their jowls here are swollen. Their head swells up. They just walk like savages. They look like savage mode Wolverine. But when they're neutered and spayed, they're just a lot more docile. They're just more gentle now. They're a lot more simple cats. You get what I'm saying? And I saw
Yeah.
this contrast because one of them, Phoenix, is a big. I have a big orange cat there named Phoenix. He looks like a fucking tiger, but he came to when I saw him, bro. I was afraid of him, but yet he was shy, but not skittish toward me too much. The cats somehow, react to my energy. But this was a very scary looking cat. I neutered him. He completely looks different. He looks more calm, more gentle, more like a normal orange cat, but he's still big. But then I look at this in the humans, and obviously we're not gonna fucking cut our gonads out. But I feel like most of this imbalance comes from that state that we're in. That's our animalistic nature, that root chakra imbalance. And I feel like this is where all these indifferences come in. Most of this competition, most of this, state of territory and whatnot comes from an imbalance here. Or even like, oh, there's too many people in the world. We need to cut the population in half. And meanwhile, I don't even believe in that. I believe in there's so much, the abundance is infinite. You know what I'm saying? There's no such thing as lack. Only lack is a consciousness that you adopt when you're given that by your environment or your DNA or whatever, your parents. But if you're aware and you can work on this space, this root chakra, this animalistic nature, you will embody this inner animal and it will be balanced in a state where you can utilize this nature, animal spirit, but it's not going to be in an imbalanced state like I observe these cats in my garden. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because I believe that it's not even just vegans, it's all the movements. It could go into the feminist movement, like they're trying to be equal rights to men. You know what I'm saying? All these things come from imbalances of a certain brain. You're full of brains. You got the brain down there. Your stomach is a brain. Your heart is a fucking brain for sure. There's neurons in your brain. You think from your heart. There's the brain here. This is the intellectual. But the balance, the yin and yang, you make order out of this. The seat of the soul is in that middle, that pineal gland, which is basically a very powerful, that's the most blood flow in that gland. You get what I'm saying? And the blood holds a lot of essence, a lot of chemistry that you have in you from what you're consuming. But this is why I'm passionate about it, bro. Like, I feel like these imbalances is an imbalanced animalistic state. I don't even think the animals that we're observing outside of us are real. They're just a nature. You're looking at your animalistic nature in real time when you're looking at these animals. The cats, they're me. I'm observing myself. When I look at, that's why I have such an understanding of these animals. Because I feel like I'm talking and I'm looking at them as myself, that I'm so, it's like the plants, bro. Like when I walk my garden, I somehow know what my plants need. Like people talk about, oh, a trained eye intellectually may say that plant has a nitrogen deficiency, there's a phosphorus deficiency there. But, and then they go and buy chemicals in Lowe's or Walmart and they start putting these chemicals to compensate for what stopped working in the soil to begin with. Do you understand what's going on in the soil, the chemistry, the microorganisms processing it? It's like a machine. And something stopped working because it either got compromised from dehydration, not enough water, you know what I'm saying, not enough organic matter on top. You know what I'm saying? That's why a thick layer of mulch is so important, because underneath, even the type of water you use can compromise that. You know how much of a different type of chemistry and life force is in the water that comes from the sky versus the water that's coming out of your faucet? You get what I'm saying? There's more nitrogen from the water that's coming from the sky, and nitrogen is the main water you need for growth. But if you can maintain a thick layer above that soil, the moisture retains down there and the soil never stops working because the microorganisms aren't compromised. If you're put in an environment where you're either too hot and you dehydrate, you may die. It's the same thing with the microorganisms down there. They have to continue to strive throughout the entire season so the plant never experiences a deficiency. There's no such thing as deficiencies in my life. It's something stopped working because the chemistry stopped working. Your body, oh, I have a B12 deficiency. I have this deficiency. You don't have no deficiencies. Your intrinsic factor is not working properly because you compromised it with the shit you're putting in there. Either dehydration, you're not breathing properly, and you can live off 7 or 8 micrograms in your body and it stays and recycles in your system for literally an extended amount of years. You know what I'm saying? Maybe throughout your entire lifetime. Yet there's people taking 1,500 to 5,000 micrograms of B12 and they're still deficient. How the fuck is that? That means you're not utilizing it properly, man. And it's to begin with, this is not even something that you're supposed to be taking synthetically. This is something that's it's a bacteria that you're supposed to actually be able to house in your body. So you actually, and even Bruce Lipton talked about this. Your body's like a petri dish of bacteria. You know what I'm saying? And you got to treat your body as such. A lot of people are so knowledgeable on how to make water kefir or milk kefirs or whatnot, but they don't even know how to manage their own bacteria in their body. You want to take these external things, but yet you take other things to compromise the bacteria in your body once you put it in, but you took care of it differently when it was in the petri dish. You know what I'm saying? So it's like as within, so without. Everything is connected, but it's all working like a chemistry. You know what I'm saying? Yes, your belief behind it matters because what you believe about it. Again, when we did the Dr. Emoto experiment and whatnot, it's your intent and belief behind all that energy you're putting into it. The mastermind is still mind over matter, but at the end of the day, there's always going to still be a chemistry. You get what I'm saying? No matter how much you try to work against the grain, there's a chemistry that's going to happen, but is your mind strong enough to be able to neutralize that chemistry to begin with? You're putting imbalances in your body. Are you strong enough to imbalance those chemistries? Because you even said before, every time you take a bite of that cheeseburger, you know that there's you're taking poison every time you're eating. You already know this, you know?
If you imagine that you're having a dream,
Mm-hmm.
then all of these things they just pale into insignificance. It's
Absolutely.
fun,
Yes, it
it's
is fun.
exciting,
It is. That's right.
yeah. And I think the thing to do with this life is to take the fun, engage with the fun
That's
as much
it.
as we can.
But isn't that the same
Don't
thing? Isn't that the same thing with if you was to hear somebody say take psychedelics for healing and there's all these spiritual people say heal? Well, it's okay. It's fun to go on that journey, but I mean, what does it matter if you're in a dream, right? If you realize it's a dream, merrily, 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 so then what is the point of even everything we've spoken about? What is the point of it if we're just in a dream, right? It's fun. It's engaging. Maybe it's content. People feel so interested in listening to these things, listening to our perspectives and points of view. They're so interested in it. We're wordsmiths. We can pretty much put words together so brilliantly that we can actually come up with 3 hours of like brilliant content. But does it even matter? How would it benefit others' lives? I ask myself all these questions all the time. What's the point of even talking about all this then? Right?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, what's the point? Well, consciousness knows what the point is,
Uh,
and if we look at the so-called evolution of man, then we see how the humble beginnings were, and we can sort of envision where the futuristic human being is going. Then we have a spectrum within consciousness, and the spectrum is a fucking movie, and it's incredible. And there's the macro and there's the micro,
well,
and there's
from
the dark and the light and
uh,
the good and the bad, and there's all this stuff going on. It's absolutely fascinating.
yeah.
And so when we engage in it, I mean, passionately participating in the play, then we can have a blast. If we take it too seriously, then we're going to be feeling victimized by the pain and the suffering and, all the rest of the negative exposure that our ego is going to, be embroiled in. But if we diminish our ego to the level of the necessity that the human being needs, and we don't get over engaged in projecting our emotions and our biases onto the whole world, like vegans or like ban the bomb, or animal protection, and all this sort of stuff. If we want to get involved in that, then is a choice. There's a certain amount of freedom that we have,
I'm not gonna lie,
albeit
it's actually very fun to engage in certain things like that. It really is. I'm not gonna lie. It's no
yeah.
different than me getting into an octagon with somebody and just going head to head. Like, is it necessary to fight, or why are you doing it? It's a sport. I mean, whatever.
It's
Life in
it's a
general is going to be
sport.
considered a sport. But here's the thing. Let's say you see, we got so many different ways of looking at things. But so you said evolution of man, right? Do you believe everybody's an NPC outside of you? Like, who's really responsible for the evolution of man if everybody is collapsed into existence by your consciousness individually, right? So let's say from your worldview, your perspective, you're the only one here on this planet. From my perspective, I'm the only one here on this planet. I'm giving life to you by collapsing you into existence and even having an interaction with you. No different than, let's say, If I'm interacting with my plants, I can either give them no attention and they'll still thrive because, again, everything's still under the frequency of love. But what if I gave it my powerful chemistry? How much more fruit, how much more of that blossom and flourishment can they get just because of my beautiful, loving chemistry that they react to based on my energy, right? So, in other words, who's
Yeah.
giving life to the planet? I am. The same way I could have a green thumb with life, even money. How good are you with finances? You said the number one thing, if somebody wants to be, what's the first thing you ask them? How are you financially doing? Well, do you have a green thumb? Because I count money like this. And I can have a green thumb of money, but how do you get a green thumb of money? You don't, it's a consciousness. You don't chase it. It just comes to you when you're consciously aware of abundance and not lack, then you get money. If you're consciously aware of the abundance of love and life, then you get more of that green thumb. My interaction with people is from my energy. How much of that, how is my relationship with life to begin with? Is how much of a relationship do I have with myself? Well, then that determines how much of the green stuff that I count in my fingers as well, right? Because this is all, this is your power. I mean, this is why people pray. I mean, what am I holding on to? What can I let go? What can I give? What can I receive? It's just all reciprocity. I mean, I'm having fun. If you're not having fun in what you're doing, then you're a slave. If I like what I'm doing, then I'm gonna get compensated with more of it in even other things that aren't even equated to that, like money, are gonna follow because it's in the same frequency. Money is neutral. And what I believe about money being love, if I love what I'm doing, love follows that. The love, I mean, my fruits. Look how much I had 76 watermelons last year, man. You know what I'm saying? And like you saw my garden, bro. This is not a huge field, but I got 76 watermelons. What did I do? I made my space work for me, right? I had the environment and ecosystem work for me. So I was a proper CEO where I wasn't a slave to the land. I prepped it up in a way where it was working for me because I prepped it with love and I prepped it with the knowledge and intelligence. How do I have my life structured? What do I want out of it? Obviously, I made a video about the new year, the 33 and whatnot. How I look at how I jumped into New Year because New Year to me is shit. I mean, January 1st, bro, that's New Year. To me, New Year is in the spring equinox when I follow the calendars. So you got Aries, when you get spring, right? That's literally New Year's. But when you look at, let's say, October, October is basically month number 10. But October, even that's off because October is really 8. That's where you get the word Octavio. And then 9, November, Noviembre is November. That's number 9. That's Latin for 9, but
Yeah.
that's still month 11, right? And then you got 12. You got December, that decades. That should be number 10. But meanwhile, December is month number 12. So now look what I did. I got October, and I look at that. 1 plus 0 is 1, right? So I look at that as 1. Then I look at November. That's 2, right? 1, that's 11 is 2. Then December, I look at that at 12. Then 1 plus 2 is 3.
Three.
So now I
Yeah.
got month 1, month 2, month 3. So what I did was I prepped my garden the same way. When I prep my garden from January. Because January, you want to start planting the seeds you want to put, where you're going to put them. You got to start rotating your crops because you're not going to put the same things in the same spot you did last year because you grew nematodes there that you don't want. It's always, crop rotating is very wise, right? So you
Hmm.
change every year, you do things differently so that it works for you. You change your system, you do your things, rearrange things around, plant seeds differently. So January 1st is really it was really October, which was month 1. November is really month 2, which is February, and month 3 is really December, which is March. There's my new year. You know what I'm saying? So I prepped it from December going forward. What did I do? I just redefined the meaning of what I believed once was New Year to make it work for me in my favor. I didn't read that anywhere. I just did that on the fly because I looked at my garden and I equated how I work my garden to how I manage my life the same exact way. But does it matter? I mean, order out of chaos. Everything can be very, very chaotic because that's just the nature of things. Everything is just chaotic. Who's making the order out of the chaos? The masculine energy of the planet is the sun. So man is supposed to be taking order over the masculine energy of chaos, which, I mean, the feminine energy of chaos. And that's what our responsibility is, to make order and structure out of things, right? We're builders. We're here to create, but we're not here to just say, oh, nothing matters. We're here to create. That's the beauty of being alive, is that we can create. How do we have dominion over the planet? We have the ability to do things that other animals can't do, and that's create, right? So that's why when I look at animals, yeah, we have dominion and we should respect nature. That's why if you pull a mushroom out of nature, do you just take it to be a better fucking more evolved human, or do you make a ritual out of it and respect it as much as that when you kill the animal, you transmute that energy because it's going through you, and you're gonna actually have that animal experience its reality through you now in a more evolved state. These are things and how I look at it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to make this disclaimer because I talked about B12 and that. I'm not a medical doctor. Do your own research because I did get one of my videos blocked for talking about B12, believe it or not. So I'm a science fiction movie director. Do your own research, all right? I'm just talking. Take the information for how you will.
When we look at how the world works, and we may take ownership of creating melons and nurturing the land and doing this and doing that, and we are here to create, and we're actually serving a purpose. Well, when our body dies and it goes into the ground, we're creating equally, in lots of other ways, in microorganisms, and tilling the earth inside out. And so don't you think that it's only our ego that is enhancing our position, because at the end of the day, when we look at the purpose that we think
Enhancing our
we've got,
position how?
sorry,
Enhancing our position how?
enhancing our position, because look, for instance, with squirrels, uh, because I have a squirrel as a friend, then I listen to other videos on squirrels so I can learn more about
Mm-hmm.
him, how I can be of service to him, how I can help him and them, and all these sort of things. And during the course of me listening to squirrels, I learned that the vast majority of the oak trees in Great Britain came about as a response to squirrels. Because if we go back in the old days, then you look at what animals were around. Well, there's a great amount of deer and wild boar and hogs which would gobble up all the acorns. And so whenever the acorns fell, intermittently from the tree, then there would always be grazing animals that are going to be eating them. The squirrels, however, when they got hold of the acorns, they would go and bury them. And so, therefore, then you look at what the squirrels are doing on the earth. They are creating oak trees, they're creating oxygen, they're creating environments for a whole ecosystem. And it goes on and on and on and on. And in the squirrel, he wasn't even conscious of what it was doing. And so, if we look at what we're doing, whatever we're conscious of doing is just a byproduct of our ego. The human being is here for part of the ecology, just as anything else. It's important. It's no less important. It's just a creature that supposedly has evolved out of the soil, the same as everything else. And so I think that because we are endowed with a certain level of intelligence, we have to keep a check on our ego as to how important that is. Because when we look into the intelligence of trees and plants and animals and microorganisms, we go, wow, this stuff is smart as fuck.
Can I
And of
ask you a
course, it's
question?
got to be smart.
Can you go back to when you said tilling the ground? What example did you give me on that? You said something about tilling the ground and whatnot.
Tilling the ground,
Why did you bring that up?
because tilling the ground fertilizes the ground, and then it gives rise to all other plants and creatures and everything. And so when you've got oak trees which come about because the squirrels planted them, and then the oak tree drops its leaves and its fodder over periods of many years, then it fertilizes the ground and it enables other creatures to live and thrive. And then you get wasps that have a relationship with oak trees, and then you get all different sorts of bugs and everything. So it's an ecosystem which is highly dependent on everything. There's nothing responsible solely for anything that goes there. But what we can see in relation to the human being, in spite of our ego and how great we think we are, we cause an enormous amount of damage, which is quite irreparable, because we create so much damage in such a short period of time, which isn't natural. No other animal on the planet really does that. And you'll get grazing animals which will
In, in,
outgraze.
in my opinion, tilling the ground causes more damage. With even though you have intentions of planting things there, you're causing a hell of a lot more damage doing that. See, the whole tilling thing is like it disturbs the ecosystem of the soil in and of itself. So like you'll always have to still be a slave to the land doing that. And I understand, because in order for it to be interest for a profit, people do quick turnarounds like that. But in nature, nobody's tilling anything. In actuality, it's just more fertile
No,
there because of the
I'm not talking
microorganisms.
about mechanical tilling like ploughing. I'm talking about tilling like worms are tilling.
Mhm.
They're turning over like a grazing beast is tilling, because
Yeah, yeah,
as it eats the grass, it's laying a layer over again. So it's a complete
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
reconstitution
because I thought you were
of
talking about
everything that's
mechanical
going on.
tilling, and I'm like, that's
No, when
actually
the leaves
atrocious.
drop,
Yeah.
they rot into the ground and then roots come up. Roots are pushing soil away and then they're falling back down. So it's a tilling process
Well,
going on.
let me interject before you go on anymore, because the reason I even bring this whole thing with the we're here to create. Where you see, once we're self actualized in this way, when we say we create our reality, this actually goes into creating your reality even beyond what we think death is, because we think that we create our reality and then our reality stops when we die. You get what I'm saying? I feel like I look at a lot of how Egyptians used to live their lives at one point. You get what I'm saying? Or the idea of that, because all these things are basically ideas. But we can look closely at it to see how we can actually look at that into our everyday life now. But why did they prepare and emphasize so much how they lived and prepared for death? And even in that death process, the mummification was done in a certain way, taking the brain out was done in a certain way. For some strange reason, I feel like a lot of what we're creating here, we're still creating in our afterlife. But I feel like we are supposed to be very self actualized here to know who and what we are. And the imprisonment in reality is when you think you're limited to this individual that you are, to just say, oh yeah, we mean nothing here, we're just a product of chance and fate and whatnot. We can say and humble ourselves to say that we're not that important, but in actuality, it's just the same example I said. If I close myself up to saying I know nothing, then I'll just limit myself to not know nothing. But there's brilliance in knowing that you don't know nothing, is you keep your mind open to knowing more, because even saying you know everything, you just cap yourself off to saying you have nothing else to learn. But in actuality, it still opens the door. When you know how to use that power, you open the door to more of what you're looking for, or what you are trying to channel into your space. Because there's really well, you see, when you say I know everything, but you think you know everything and there's nothing more, or you can say you know everything but know it's infinite, then you still have the ability to know more. So if I am here saying I am extremely important, right, then I know that I am actually a creator and I have the ability to evolve beyond this human vessel. Then I'm opening the door to be able to fathom what's beyond humanity. Because somebody can say, I want to be a god, or I want to live in the kingdom of heaven, but how could you fathom that? You don't even know anything other than anthropomorphizing it in space and time. When you die, you're not in space and time anymore. So what are you going to
Yeah.
fathom after that?
So the
You have
question
to
is
align
then,
to a frequency.
who are you speaking about when you say I? Because if you think your body is important because it's the ego and it's the responsible for all the things you do on this planet, well, what does the body consist of? Trillions of tiny little dinosaurs, grotesque and terrifying
I
monsters when
can
you put
answer
them
that
under
though.
the.
Yeah, I can
So,
answer
so
that, because
but
I look at my body as my body is the body of Christ, but my body is all things. So the fact that I evolved, everything, and that's how mankind evolves. Because I'm collapsing you, so that's why I said, like I asked you in one of our previous chats, if you evolve spiritually and mentally, does that impact humanity, or does that impact you individually only? And you said it impacts humanity.
Well, I mean, it impacts everything because,
Exactly.
and nothing. It impacts everything and nothing because this
Because
is a
there is
great
nothing at
paradox.
the same time. Yeah, it's a
Because
paradox.
there's nothing save for the dream in the mind of God. And
Exactly.
so when we say I, when I say I, I'm talking about consciousness. I'm talking about I am consciousness, nothing more. I am an idea in consciousness. And so as far as this body goes and this ego goes and this Aaron bloke, it's just a fiction. It's all a fantasy. And I know it's an absolute fiction because you'll look at this Aaron bloke in one perspective, and other people will look at me in another perspective. And
Yeah.
by the time I've had 10,000 people look at me in their perspective, then you'll wonder who the fuck or what is actually here, because it'll be so vague and it's so different that you go, are you talking about the same person? No, because there is no person. There
Yeah.
is no person
There
here.
is no
There's
person.
nothing
Well,
here. There's a dream in the mind of God.
and
And
that's the
so
whole thing.
when we
Even
look at
even us doing these chats, we're putting ourselves vulnerable for the world to see us. You know what I'm saying? Like either way you put it, a lot of people don't have the courage to even speak because they are afraid of what others may say, or how they'll be judged and whatnot. So it's sort of a sacrifice, but then again, it's what you believe about yourself. You get what I'm saying? I'm speaking to myself about myself in actuality, but there is no self at the same time. You know what I'm saying? That whole insecurity thing is you being disconnected from self, thinking that everything outside of you matters more than you, and
and
then
when
you
we
go
go
into
to sleep
depression that way.
tonight, when we go to sleep tonight, whatever is compelling us to have this experience now is going to continue in another dimension,
That's
in
right.
another world, because that's what it does.
Yeah,
And so when you say who's doing this, what's doing this, and why, isness is doing it. Isness is having an experience of itself. And we just happen to think that we are a little part of it, when in actual fact, we are the entirety of
that's right.
it. We are it. And so when we look at what happens with our homunculus, which we create in our psyche when we dream, when our unconscious creates that, well, that's all we're doing on a bigger scale when we're doing this now. We're dreaming each other. And when you look at it, how we are dreaming each other, because there's you and me, and particles of us is flying across the globe, and coming down antennae and coming through little gadgets and ending up on a screen. We bought into the fact that I'm actually speaking to a human being. I'm not speaking to a human being. I'm speaking to binary. I'm speaking to variant shades of light. That's all I'm speaking to. I am not speaking to a human being. If there's a human being exists called Ziggy, then he's lives 6,000 fucking miles away from me, and I'm not speaking to him, and I've never spoken to him.
Hmm.
So
And I can understand what you're saying. I really understand what you're saying. It may
yeah,
it's something that if somebody listens to what you just said and really really just sits down and ponders on it, it would be kind of like mind blowing to really think about. But
yes. But this is the thing, you see, what
you know
our
what's
ego
funny? What
mind
time? What
does
time is it in your? What time is it by where you're at?
is 5 to 1.
5 to 1. So you're in the future.
Yeah,
You're in the future. I'm
yeah,
not even. I'm
yeah,
in the past. It's like it's 5 to 8 over here. You see what I'm saying?
yeah,
It's crazy. So you
yeah,
experience the sun go down before I did.
yeah,
But yet we're talking in same actual time, right? But yet in
yeah.
different, like you're having a totally different experience. You're in the
Well, it just
future.
goes to show that time's an illusion and everything is an illusion.
Yeah,
And, when we actually look, if I just close this screen down on this computer, you would disappear. I couldn't hear you, I couldn't see you, and then I'll have a faint memory here somehow how you sounded and what you looked like. But that would be a very, very rough, vague sort of image. And as the weeks pass by, then it'll fade away into something that I could never replicate. But if I saw that image again, I'll go, oh, that's that person I used to speak to,
yeah,
because the illusion comes back online.
yeah,
All we're doing here is basking in the illusion. And when you look at it like about that. It's fascinating. It's phenomenological. It's just inspiring and intriguing, and it's consciousness, ejaculating.
Yeah.
That's what's going on, and I am perfectly happy knowing that. In actual fact, I'm more happy than knowing or thinking that I am Aaron having a human experience.
Well,
I'm
here's
fucking
the thing.
conscious.
You said you're a hypnotist, right? Because I'm a hypnotist. But the thing
Yeah,
is, do you notice how there's certain accounts to where somebody, when you put them in a certain state, right, they can recall everything that happened with exact time, exact places, exact things that were said, but yet consciously they didn't pick it up. But when you're tapping into a deeper layer of themselves, everything is recorded. You know everything that they experience, they know. You get what I'm saying? But then when
yeah,
you're trying to consciously, right, grab that memory, it won't come to you in exact detail. So that's why sometimes I look at it and I say, well, there's women that I've slept with that years ago, and I'm like, God damn! I remember a picture will pop up on social media. I'm like, God damn! I forgot this person even existed. I forgot what their name was. I forgot everything about them. Everything. It's just like if they never existed. Like if it was in a past life, you know. And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
crazy to think about. But I was intimate with them. Imagine. It couldn't
yeah,
get any closer. They were downloaded in my system because we had sex. And I'm like, yo, I don't even remember them. Imagine you and I are talking, but imagine them with that girl. It was a direct chemistry, and I don't remember a goddamn thing about her. You know.
yeah.
So it's like but then deep inside, if I was to get put under, I mean, there's a way to tap into because a person is like a computer. It's just that their consciousness has to be put offline. That's why for you to put somebody in a hypnotic state, they have to trust you, but the consciousness have to be offline because it's always gonna. You notice how you could get easily hypnotized watching a program on TV, but because you're not aware that you're getting hypnotized, but the moment you're aware you're getting hypnotized, your conscious mind is online directly. Or when you're trying to come out of body, you notice it's a lot harder to come out of body or to go to sleep. It's a lot harder when you're trying to go to sleep, but when you just let go and just you'll fall asleep, or if you're consciously
Yeah,
trying to control, because there's a way to skillfully get the conscious mind offline, because I've done it where I can just sit there and I'll just be out and I'll just come out. But then I stopped doing it, and you kind of lose that ability. But there was a point where I could just close my eyes and I was done in a second. I can just be out of body in a second. But
right.
it's consciousness that's the player hater. It's the fucking player hater that's keeping you from doing shit that you really are intentionally trying to do. But are you aware, and like are you in, like, what's in control of that consciousness? You get what I'm saying? Like, that's the whole thing. But is it even yours to begin with? And then on
Well,
top of
yeah.
that, hmm, yeah,
I was going to say, obviously it's 1 o'clock in the morning here, so we're going to want to wrap this one up now because we've been speaking about 4 hours because we did about half an hour before.
yeah, yeah,
We've done
yeah,
3.5 hours now. But
yeah. We
one of
could
the
we could
things
we could we
we
could chop it up a little bit, like the next couple minutes, and then we can continue in another time.
yeah, and so one of the subjects we could do next time we speak, we can look at how our life could never have been any other way. And
Yeah,
what I mean by that is we're speaking about the lack of free will, because our future becomes ever increasingly more predetermined, premised on the amount of past that we have, i.e., as we go through life and we fall into certain grooves, we become more predetermined to follow those grooves. And there was a saying
yeah,
which was
yeah,
written in the 1800s, and it says that um, oh, it's about a creature that moves in predetermined grooves. Not even a bus, but a tram.
mhm,
It says like something like, you know, I can't remember, but damn. When I recall that I am a creature that moves in predetermined grooves, not even a bus, but a tram.
Mhm.
And so when we reflect on what actually we are, we realize that we couldn't, in actual fact, have deviated very much, if anything, from the trajectory that we was always destined to be on. And now what I feel now, as I'm more connected in my spiritual life, is that every single thing that I've ever been done was done with the knowledge and the purpose of bringing me here, as if it was already preordained, pre-written, and it has been done before. And all that happens now is my consciousness realizes, oh, that's why I did that. That's why I went there. That's why I met that person. That's why I read that book. Because all of these things have brought me here now, exactly where I should be.
Yeah,
Do you
I
feel like
agree.
that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like I am supposed to be exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing the things I'm supposed to be doing right now.
So how do we account then, Ziggy, for people who are so discontent with their lives because they think they should be in some other place?
Well, that was my point. So what? That's why I spoke about the whole cow thing. And is your life chosen? Did you get here by chance? Is it a lottery ticket? What are the odds that That's the reason why I even brought all that up. It's not to say that because that's why I said we could say we're all one, but the cow, what are the odds that that cow got there? What about the person who's in that space that they're discontent? And why? It's like if I'm discontent with my life, right? I have to realize that there's inflammation in my life to some extent. So you address it accordingly, but you would have to know why. Get to the root core of it. Like if I was born in a poor household and I'm constantly struggling with bills, that's a consciousness of lack, but it's all consciousness, like you spoke about before. But how do you do that? If the body runs on pure programs, we're programmed to live our life a certain way, and it's all
Yeah.
pre-programmed even from the moment we're in the womb of the mom. But when you become aware, that's why even in one of our chats I said, what's the difference between consciousness and awareness? You become aware of a program that's corrupt, you override it, but sometimes it may take discipline where you have to do it
Yeah.
habitually to change a program, to convince yourself, because the conscious mind is aware of what you are and it thinks it is what it is. So you have to convince it that it's not that and override that.
This
But
is
what happens if you change your mind and you're able to do it in a paradigm shift in an instant? You change your mind, it can also change that way,
yeah.
but that takes a lot of power.
Yes,
Willpower,
and so
willpower.
when we become hypnotists, or when we become awoke, and we realize what we are doing, and what the actions that we're doing are going to be leading to, then we go, "Whoa,
Yeah,
I'm not actually going down that road," because now you see precognitively into the future, because you can see that if you continue to travel on this
that's right.
trajectory, or if you have a relationship with these people, or if you're still doing that job, you're going to end up here.
Right.
You don't want to be here, because this
Yeah,
isn't going to be a healthy or a happy
that's
environment.
right.
So therefore, we have to bring about changes. Now, when we bring about changes with meditation, our ego fights against that, because it was happy being what it was and doing what it was, because it got into the groove and it felt more secure. But when you start meditating, you take the ego out of its security, and then it fights hell for
Yeah, but
leather. And that's
sometimes
why we get,
sometimes it could make the ego stronger, because now you just made the ego like some people actually become spiritually evolved, but it's just their ego's more fancy way of expressing itself. You get what I'm saying? So sometimes even that, when you become, let's say, good at meditating, you could become a very good meditator. You know what I'm saying? But does that even necessarily mean that you're self-actualized or self-aware or even more spiritual? Because some people could just become masters at changing their brainwaves. You know what I'm saying? It's no different
yeah,
than somebody becoming more disciplined and more skilled at the game of life to make more money because they have more discipline over the
yeah.
things
So
that they're doing.
there's other peripheral
That's right,
avenues,
sir. So
and some people will get them, other people won't get them.
yeah, and
Okay, so we've got that to sort out, and then the what
yeah, we'll talk about
the
that in the next
very
one because that's actually good. Where a lot of people, even you could tell they'll even dress differently. They'll put on a turban. Oh, I'm more spiritual, and they'll start doing this and namaste. That's just fancy ego expression, and they think they're more spiritual, right? I want to talk about that the
yeah.
next time because that's actually very, very important because that actually trickles down to the information that's even shared online. That's actually created in the form of mind viruses for other people, and then that's how they closely associate to a certain particular character, and all that does is it fucking creates more of a separation on the planet. And that's, see, this is
Yeah.
the thing, Aaron. One important thing, I'm a fucking disruptor, and that's what I've labeled myself as, even though I don't like putting myself as labels. I'm a fucking disruptor. And eventually, if it gets to the point that I see too much fucking chaos, I'm gonna start being a very serious disruptor on this shit. You get what I'm saying? There's been disruptors here and they've been attacked, but when I say I've seen people creating some fucked up shit online, people with big ass followings saying shit that they shouldn't be saying, I mean, guess somebody may say, Pete, but Zigzag, yo, that's just your perspective. I could say whatever you fucking say. I mean, you got something to say to me, then you be the disruptor in the wrench that I'm throwing in that fucking in that wheel. And if you could do it, do it. If you can't do it, then just sit back and observe. Don't keep your fucking mouth shut. You know. But I'm telling you
Yeah.
right now, if you there's a lot of people who comment giving their opinions. I allow that. That's fine because that's that. If I allow comments, it's because I allow good ones, just like I allow bad ones. As long as you don't disrespect me or tell me what I should do or what I shouldn't do, like talk to who I shouldn't talk to, or you know how many people email me telling me I shouldn't talk to you? I'm like, bitch, go fuck yourself, man. I like give me opinions on our information, but do not tell me who the fuck I should talk to. Because my channel is like this. My house, if I bring you into my house, I tell you make yourself at home, you still got limitations. You could make yourself at home, meaning I'll give you good hospitality, go grab a drink if you want, make yourself at home and be comfortable. But the moment you get up thinking you're owner of my house telling me what to do, you're gonna get fucking checked real fucking quick. You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
don't tell me who the and I'll say that right now to make that as a disclaimer. Do not ever tell me who to talk to, how I should say this shit. If you want me to fucking talk about topics, I'll do that. But never tell me who the fuck I should talk to and not talk to. If you got a problem with the person, talk to them directly. Because if they're not there to defend themselves, then you should not be saying anything about that individual to begin with. Or go directly to that person and tell them what you feel. Don't tell me anything pertaining to that individual because I don't give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? It didn't happen in my reality. I'm just saying that as a disclaimer. That shit pissed me the fuck off. And that's why I'm going to talk about it right now. You know what I'm saying? A couple, and they
Yeah.
know who the fuck they are. Don't fucking email me with bullshit because I will call you out and I'll fucking publicly put your name out. Bitch. I'm
Yeah.
just letting you know. Don't do that again.
Exactly. Bitches with their overinflated opinion of their own opinion and value,
But they
and
won't go online and make a fucking video. Like, how am I
yeah,
going to contrast what the fuck you're saying if you don't even make a video to make sense of what the fuck you're saying? You leave a comment. Sometimes I don't even understand what the fuck you're saying.
yeah, there's just a load of other bullshit, and so but when we look at what we're doing, these so-called trolls or bad energies, if they're a very very small percentage, and when my channel was up, and let's say I think I had like 600 subscribers, then. I think I had about 5 people in 6 months that had something to say about me. In the text, hiding from behind
They have no
their,
channels. Those are the first ones
yeah,
to
no,
always
no
fucking leave
channel.
some fucking random
Yeah,
opinion.
they have no real name. They have no picture, and I would say, come online if you got something to say. Come online, and then you can listen to my half of the fucking story, and you can listen to some rationalizing about it. But people just want to believe what they want to believe, and so let them get on with it. They're a victim of their own mentality at the end of the day, and whatever they've got to say is never ever going to compromise the likes of you and I. So the other thing is the hierarchy that I think it would be good to broach. In relation to the global mythology of gods and alien connection and hierarchical system through kings and queens and all this sort of thing that's been passed down. You see, our monarchy to this day, they believe they have the God-given right. God-given. What God? This is what I want to speak about. Was it the Anunnaki? Probably. Was it Jehovah? Doubtless. Was it Allah? No. So what God are they proclaiming that gives them their God-given right to rule over, the nation?
Well,
And so when
that's
we
the
look in,
reason why I definitely want to cover hierarchy, because even that, for example, that's why I asked you about, the whole people looking up to somebody else as far as information for them to relay. Like when I asked you about Dolores Cannon, do you look at her above you or do you look at her equal to you? Like even looking at Christ, equal to Christ. If you put yourself equal to Christ, right? A lot of people will say, "Oh, that's blasphemous and whatnot." But when you do that, you're allowing a direct frequency channel for you to be able to direct that divine energy or whatever you consider Jesus Christ to be. You get what I'm saying? It doesn't matter. You're just putting yourself in frequency to channel energy. That's all you're doing. And it's not that you have to go and study. Your brain is so limited. You can't retain all the information there is to know about the universe. You get what I'm saying? Whatever you're tapping into, you're able to directly channel it, and you're able to talk about it. You're able to intellectualize it because you have a balanced, you know, vessel to be able to channel uh, metaphysical, or whatever we would consider that, etherical, spirit, energy, whatever you want to call it, God, and bring it and ground it here to be able to give a current, like a transmission, right? It's like if I put a plug, you have to have a certain amount of voltage coming out. You're able to ground and evenly disperse your energy to give it out in a grounded way. Some people who are sometimes I'm not gonna lie, you could even observe this through my videos. I'm
Shit. And I go,
so what was that last bit? Because
Yeah. So I had a call coming. That's why. But like sometimes it's chaotic, and I'll say shit, and then it's like it doesn't stay on topic. It'll go into random territory. You get what I'm saying? So that's why, like
yeah.
sometimes I'll admit I have to ground my energy, or sometimes I have to do this to get it centered because I get it dispersed. I'm very high energy,
you know,
I
and I
mean,
have to.
there's a very powerful force, we're engaged with, working through us or whatever. We have a vast amount to say, and being able to channel that as well as we do is a real gift.
That's right.
And we know this because in all the years that I've had my channel, and I've always been asking people to come forward. Then very very few people would even dare, like you say, do what we're doing. And so there's obviously something which is vastly out of the reach of the everyday Joe. They just can't do this. They can't call on the depth of knowledge that they can't articulate in a certain way, and they can't carry themselves with the energy. There's a force here that's carrying us, that it's just like we're just plugged into something and we're off, and that's how it is. And so, okay, then wrap this one up then now.
Yeah.
My end, 3 hours and 42 minutes. Woo!
It was a good
That was a
chat,
great
bro.
chat, Ziggy.
Yeah, it was a good chat.
Yeah, really enjoyed that. I think they're getting better. They're getting better and better.
Yeah.
And so I look forward to the next one. 10 days or 2 weeks, whenever that's going to be,
Yeah.
and we'll do it all again.
Yeah. Hey, like I said, man, we might as well call this. Like I said, I even put this in a folder and called it a podcast already because this is actually podcast
Right. Yeah.
format
Yeah.
already. But it's actually good. It's we get into different territory, different things. You know what I'm saying? And it's interesting. At least
Yeah, there's so much depth to where we go every
mhm.
single conversation that we have, and we barely, invariably, ever even address the topics that we had in mind
Yeah. Yeah.
initially, because there's just too much that comes in to it, and
This should
so
be
yeah,
good also
brilliant.
to even for inspiration to continue on the book. All this information actually that we share with each other should be pretty good for that project as well, man.
Well, absolutely, because like it gives me more ideas, and
Right.
then prompts an extra depth here
Yeah.
and there, more avenues and everything. And so yeah, I mean, what we're doing is we're tilling our ground,
Right.
we're turning over our stuff, save our minds getting stagnant.
Yeah. Absolutely, man.
Yeah,
Well, listen, man, it was a pleasure. Like I said, Um, we'll
Always.
talk soon, bro. You the man.
Yep. Nice one. Nice one, Ziggy. See you
We'll
soon,
talk
bro.
soon. We'll talk soon, bro.
Bye now.